Oh, Black History Month, always. All right. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched was so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Executive Director of the Tax March, Nicole Gill.
I need my little step. Hold on. There we go. I'm short, but I pack a big punch. Good afternoon, Lansing. Okay, all I heard was them. What's going on? Good afternoon, Lansing. Woo! You guys had me worried there for a second. So my name is Nicole Gill, and I am the executive director of something called the Tax March, which is a group that was formed out of the April 15th tax marches last year. And our whole purpose is fighting for an economy that works for working families. It's pretty simple. We marched for tax fairness and for Donald Trump to release his tax returns last year, and we're doing it again. So, I know you're all here to see me, but Senator Sanders is on his way. We've been traveling across the upper Midwest this whole weekend, and that man has so much energy, so I can't wait for him to get here. It has been a long year. It's been a long week, to be honest. And just when you think you've seen it all, something else manages to shock us right to our core. And for the last year, we've really just watched in horror as the Trump administration and congressional Republicans work to enact policies that are fundamentally against our American values. But you have not just watched. All of you are here because you've stood up and you've fought back. You've marched in towns and cities across the country. You've rallied in the rain. You've called. You've emailed. You've even faxed your members of Congress, the people who were elected to serve you, the people. And you've told Republicans something very, very clear and straightforward, that we will hold them accountable for the failed policies and regressive laws that they have tried to enact and were not done. So I'm here today, you're here today, and Tax March and Senator Sanders and many progressive leaders across the country, we're here today for a very simple reason. We need to repeal the Trump tax. We need to repeal the Trump tax and put working families first. Now, I have to tell you something. The Republican Party thinks they can pull one over on us. They think that we will fall for their lies and their trickle-down BS that they use to sell this bill. They think they can fool you into believing that the Trump tax is actually going to help you. But I don't think the Republican Party knows just who they're up against. Right, Lansing? Because we know that when you have to pass a bill that was written by lobbyists in the dead of night with no hearings, it isn't going to help you and it isn't going to help me. Because we know that many of us are still working 2 jobs. We're paying off our student loans. We're deciding between paying the rent or buying groceries. We're trying to send our kids to summer camp. And Paul Ryan is getting a $19,000 tax cut from this bill. No wonder he wanted to get it done so darn badly. Because we know what Republicans are going to do next, because they've told us. They're going to cut funding for Medicare and Medicaid. They are going to cut health insurance for seniors and children. All to give the wealthy and their donors even more tax breaks. That is the modern Republican Party. We're not going to be fooled because we know who the Trump tax is really for. It gives 83% of its total tax cuts to the wealthiest 1% of Americans. This is not a bill for me. It's not a bill for you. It is a bill for donors, for CEOs, and for the ultra-wealthy. So we can't stop fighting. The fight is far from over. We will not stand for cuts to Medicare to pay for tax cuts for donors. We will not cut Medicaid so companies who ship jobs overseas get even more tax breaks. And we will not stand for cuts to public education, to SNAP, to Meals on Wheels, to housing programs, to public health. All so Donald Trump and his family can get a $1 billion tax cut. We will not stand for it. So if any Republicans are out there watching, they should be, right? Mark my words. Lansing is coming. Republicans will pay for the Trump tax, and we will make them pay, right? We will make them pay. If you would like to get involved with our actions and activities across the country, if you want to help plan a tax march in your city on April 15th, or just find out where one is, take out your phones and text Trump tax, all one word, to 52886. That's 52886. And I'll say it again later, just in case you forgot. All right, so now we're going to hear from, we have a great presenters, some of your neighbors and friends who are facing some of these challenges and feel similarly to us. So it is my pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Omar Karim. Omar is a student at Michigan State University. He works full-time as a chef at a locally owned small business in downtown Lansing, and his parents immigrated from Bangladesh to East Lansing. Please welcome Omar.
Go green. Good afternoon, Michiganders. I'm a proud resident of this great city. My parents immigrated from Bangladesh in 1985, 7 years before I was born. They came here to give me and my sister the best opportunities at following our dreams. But after the past few years, we've seen how Republicans in D.C. and Lansing have let us down. They have ignored the millions of calls we've made and letters that we've sent demanding that the 1% start paying their fair share in taxes. Yet, they ignore the people they were elected to represent, and instead are making choices to benefit their donors, huge tax breaks and increasing taxes on ordinary people like you and I. I am here today because as a full-time student and a full-time chef, just down the street, shout out Envy, I'm fed up. Every day is a struggle, and I'm sick of begging for my life. I know what it means to work hard for a better future, not just for myself, but for everyone else in our great city, state, and country. I am working toward a future in public service because I know this country and this state needs someone to fight for the working class. Not the donor class. We need true representatives of the people, and right now, the Republican leaders in D.C. and Lansing are not representing us. Every day, I go to school with students like me who can't afford the education they're receiving. We're going into massive debt, all while hoping that we'll still have a chance in the workforce after graduation. Our future is unpredictable. Every single penny I make is already accounted for before I'm even paid. Why aren't our representatives considering my future? Why aren't our representatives considering our future? Donald Trump and the Republicans keep saying they want to help people like me make ends meet. But then they go and pass this tax bill, which just squeezes my already tight situation a little tighter. And this bill, and Republicans in D.C., will keep squeezing. I cannot sit back any longer and wait for Republicans in D.C. or Lansing to make sure people like me are represented. I can't wait for Republican representatives to stop profiting off our backs and giving tax giveaways to millionaires and billionaires that buy our elections. We're fighters. We know what it takes to win because we've already lost so much. We're Lansing. We are Michigan. We are America. My name is Omar Tiger Kareem. Wakanda and America forever.
Give it up for Omar. Our next speaker is an activist with Moms Rising. She lives right here in East Lansing, Michigan, with her husband and her 2 college-age twins, and she is an advocate for health care for all. Please welcome Melissa Mackey.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to Senator Sanders, Moms Rising, and Not One Penny for inviting me to speak. My name is Melissa Mackey. I'm a Lansing resident and a mother of two, and I'm here today to speak out for all the moms in Michigan and across the country who will be hurt by the Republican tax plan. There's every reason to believe this law will wreak havoc on our economy, raise taxes on working families over the next decade, and jeopardize funding for programs that families rely on for food, health care, housing, education, and more, all to pay for tax breaks for ultra-wealthy individuals and big corporations. This is a bad deal for moms, dads, children, and workers, and our economy as a whole. I have twins who are juniors in college right now, and I'm worried about what will happen to them when they graduate and have to live on their own. This terrible tax plan will not only raise taxes on Michigan's working families over the next decade, but it also repeals the individual mandate, putting the health care of millions of people at risk. Will my children one day be among them? With the administration's continued attacks on health care, I'm worried my kids won't be able to find affordable health insurance, and they may have to make the dangerous choice to go without. I worry that if they fall on hard times, there won't be any social supports left to help them get back on their feet. I myself have a pre-existing lung condition. What happens if I lose my job and therefore my access to health insurance? If marketplace prices have shot up thanks to the loss of the individual mandate, there's no way I could afford insurance on my own. What if the Republicans eventually get what they really want and repeal the Affordable Care Act entirely, ripping away protections for people like me with pre-existing conditions? I have no idea how I would be able to afford all my expensive treatments and doctor visits without health care. No one should have to make these choices. Too many families are already hanging by a thread. Women, moms, and families will be further harmed by this tax law because we know the only way to pay for tax cuts for Wall Street is to slash funding for programs that working families need to get by. The budget cuts are already coming. President Trump's most recent budget proposal takes a sledgehammer to Medicaid, SNAP, and other essential programs that he once promised to protect. It's no secret that the Republicans in Congress would love to follow his lead to pay for the trillions of dollars in tax cuts they just gave away to their wealthy friends. It's outrageous. The Trump and GOP tax plan is the opposite of what moms, women, and our economy need. Moms oppose this law because they know that economic inequality is a huge weakness for our nation and that the GOP plan will turn that disaster into a national calamity. Our country prides itself on being a place where anyone has the opportunity to thrive. In order to live up to that reputation, we need to take care of people struggling through hard times. We need to make sure our children have access to food, health care, and a quality education. We need our government to work for us, not for the ultra-wealthy and big corporations. It's past time that our elected leaders listen to the moms of America and give us what we want and what we need. Thank you.
Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to thank a few organizations that this event would not be happening without. So thank you, Lansing for Revolution, Little Lobbyists, Michigan Progressive Caucus, Moms Rising, MSU College Democrats, and Next Gen Michigan. Our next speaker, Guadalupe Gonzalez, is a student at Lansing Community College and a fellow at Next Gen America. He moved here from San Antonio, Texas, where he was born and raised. Please welcome Guadalupe.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Thank you. So, as Nicole said, I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, where I grew up in a single-parent household and watched my father struggle financially to ensure that my sister and I lived better than him. Unlike Trump, he did not get $1 million to start his life. He dropped out of high school after the 9th grade and later joined the Air Force. However, he quickly understood the importance of an education. So he did as any parent would do. He made sacrifices. Sacrifices he continues to do, so that way I can fulfill this goal of achieving an education. However, this has come with many barriers. Barriers that this administration have made worse and are creating. So I want to remind everyone that it wasn't long ago when there was people like ourselves protesting outside Wall Street against the bailouts and the lack of accountability to financial institutions, whose unbridled thirst for profit costs the American people their savings and livelihoods. We were outraged then, and we should be just as outraged today. While it may not have the same face, Trump's tax bill exacerbates the divide in our country between the haves and the have-nots. Our president and the GOP have spoken with great fervor about how this bill benefits people such as you and me, but who this really benefits is people like them, the wealthy and the elite. As a full-time student who has accrued debt from student loans, it truly angers me that Trump and the GOP passed a bill that directly benefits themselves and their donors. The Trump tax scam further rigs the system against my generation to reward the wealthiest Americans and corporations. This bill hurts young people by raising insurance premiums, reducing job opportunities, and adding $1.5 trillion in debt. And who is going to have to pay for all this? We will, and young people. Meanwhile, Trump and his family will stand to gain $1 billion from these tax breaks. If that is not a conflict of interest, then I really don't know what is. Speaker Ryan argues that this bill gives the average family of four a $1,200 tax cut. He has also touted the $1.50 increase in his secretary's wage as a sign of how this tax bill is helping those in the middle class. However, I say to you, don't be fooled by Paul Ryan's and Donald Trump's false promises. This was done with every intention to benefit the wealthy and no one else, all on the back of young people like me and the working class. The defenders of this bill will say that tax reform will help small businesses and the wealthy will create jobs with the money they get to keep. Well, we have heard that since Reagan was president, and the fact is, trickle-down economics does not work. As a college student who will soon be looking for a job, I do hope that they keep their promises. But I know that to pay for these tax cuts for the rich, the GOP will cut essential programs for young people and their families like Medicaid, Meals on Wheels, and foster care support. Programs that many of us relied on growing up. Young people are watching. Young progressives will remember every Republican who supported this blatantly obvious gift to their donors, themselves, and big corporations. My generation, millennials, are now the largest voting bloc in this country. We are ready and prepared to fix the errors of this administration and the Republican Party. We're going to do that by using our voices today and every day to hold our representatives accountable. Please join us.
So next, we're going to have a family come up, and Andrea's going to speak on behalf of her family. Andrea and her husband Tom and their daughter Louisa are here with us today. Louisa was born with half a heart and lived with a tracheotomy until she was 3 years old. She's thriving now, but it is programs like Medicaid that enabled her to get the care she needed. And Andrea is an activist with little lobbyists making sure that other kids don't have to go without. Please welcome Andrea, Tom, and Louisa.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. I need to preface this. It is nap time. And, you know, it's nap time, but I am here with you to say not one penny to the Trump tax. So, nearly 20 years ago, I received my degree from MSU, along with my siblings. I became a first-generation college student, college grad. I worked really hard, and I had plans, a career, a family of my own. Eventually, that all fell into place, and then it fell out of place suddenly when my husband and I learned our second child had a severe heart defect and may not survive. Our dreams turned into nightmares. So before I share the rest of our story, I want to tell you that I'm here in East Lansing, or in Lansing, representing the little lobbyists, advocating for all children with complex medical needs. My daughter, like many, has survived, and she's been thriving thanks to Medicaid assistance. Thank you, Medicaid. Her condition would have been fatal without multiple heart surgeries. She had her first at just 9 days old, and it went well, but then there were complications. She was placed on life support and cooled to preserve her brain activity. Those were very dark days, and some of them I don't remember, but I do remember her nurse working that first morning with tears in her eyes. We didn't know what to expect, but we asked, and the ECMO technician said, "Have hope, because we do this because there is hope." So she slowly grew stronger with the help of surgeries and quality care. She fought, and we fought alongside of her. And she finally came home after 232 days of hospital life. But she came home with the tracheostomy, on a ventilator, and with a feeding tube. Thank you, Medicaid, for making it possible for my daughter to live at home. Since then, she's enjoyed playing in our backyard, visits to the park, baking cupcakes. She also enjoys making messes in my kitchen and racing Hot Wheels with her brother. She had her tracheostomy removed last October. As you can see, she no longer has that. It took nearly 3 years for her to outgrow the need for a ventilator and a trach, but she did it, and I want to tell you how. A Medicaid waiver. If it weren't for a Medicaid waiver that supports the transition of babies and children from hospital to home, she would have spent the first 3 years of her life in a hospital. Thank you, Medicaid, again, for saving my baby and helping her live at home. And I have to tell you, she no longer needs Medicaid because she doesn't have a ventilator at home and she doesn't have a trach. But, you know, all along, we've had quality private health insurance, but that wasn't enough. She needed more. She needed Medicaid in addition. She needed around-the-clock nursing care, someone to make sure that ventilator continued to work and she continued to breathe. So I do want to tell you, I've gotten to know so many families with similar situations just like ours, and they would not be able to keep the electricity on or a roof over their head if it weren't for Medicaid for their loved one. And just like me, they say, thank you, Medicaid. The repeat attacks on the ACA and on Medicaid during the last year have brought out a fight in me. Families like mine, we know how to fight, and we're here. And Trump tax is irresponsible. It directly affects our children and coverage for them. So join me in this fight. We say, not one penny.
Louisa's adorable. All right. Next, we are going to hear from somebody that I was fangirling over backstage. She's an activist. She is a Flint native. She's the youngest Women's March Youth Ambassador, and many, many, many more titles. Her name is Mari Copley, but you might know her as Little Miss Flint. Please welcome Mari to the stage.
I'm 10 years old. You probably already know me as Little Miss Flint. Recently, our president and members of the GOP were able to pass a new tax plan. Under this Republican tax plan, the wealthiest Americans will get a huge tax cut. But here's the thing, they already aren't paying their fair share. In school, my teachers told me that cheating is wrong. And if we were caught cheating, we would be in big trouble. Clearly, no one told that to the Republicans in Congress. Because this plan rewards people who cheat. So while the rich get even richer, working families like mine will pay the price with higher taxes and by having to pay more for going to the doctor when we're sick. People like you and me know that 45's tax plan will hurt people, especially kids. And the majority of Americans don't like this plan because it will cut funding to the programs we need. Like my public education, without a good education, how can I make sure I'm prepared to run for president in 2044? In other words, Trump's tax plan is just downright evil. In school, we're taught that bullying is wrong, no matter who you are, but the big bully that sits in the White House and his GOP are giving big companies free reign on the playground. While smaller businesses and the middle-class families are left out in the cold. And it's not just the tax plan refusing to pass a Clean Dream Act, holding kids' health care hostage for months, not even trying to give us common sense gun laws. And the president. And the president and his crazy Twitter rants, it's all bullying, and it's not right. To the grown-ups in Washington, I want to make it clear that the kids are watching. We see what you are doing and how you are hurting us and our families. We see how you are not listening to your citizens. We need everything. We see everything wrong that you do. And one day, very soon, sooner than you are thinking, we are coming. And we will have you will have to answer us because it's our lives and our futures are at stake. Oh, and also, in your politics are risking our futures before we even get a chance to vote. Bye-bye.
Mari, 2044. She's pretty great, right? Yeah, I know. All right, I have to tell you, Senator Sanders is officially in the House, so let's make some noise. You know, we got to make sure he can hear you and knows you're out there. Our next speaker. Well, if you followed Bernie in 2016, you're going to know this next woman very well. Nina Turner. Senator Nina Turner has been by Bernie's side since the beginning. She's a fighter, she's a preacher, and she knows what is going on. She's going to tell us. Let's welcome Nina Turner to the stage.
Wow. Lansing! 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 Wow. Hello, Lansing. It's certainly a pleasure to join you this afternoon. And I certainly want to thank Not One Penny for hosting the group of conscious-minded folks who are here this afternoon. So we all know why we're here. We're here to have a family conversation about the wrong direction that the GOP or the Trump tax plan is taking our country. Now, we know that trickle-down never has worked, never will work. Trickle-down is a trick down. So this repressive, regressive tax that hurts the overwhelming majority of Americans, increasing our deficit by about $1.7 trillion, not to build roads and bridges, not to educate our children, not to have Medicare for all, but to give the wealthiest of the wealthiest another tax break. Trickle down is a trick. But we will not relent, we will not give in, we will not give out, we will continue to stand strong and push back against this Trump tax plan. So now this is where you come in, because it is always good for the family to get together, but we must be committed to not just protest, but to also plan. We need some folks protesting, but we need other folks planning, because 2020 is coming sooner than we think. So in the spirit of one of the greatest public servants to ever serve in Congress by the name of Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, can I share a little bit? Can I share a little bit? The Congresswoman, what she said encapsulates why we are here today and why Senator Sanders is traveling all across this country to remind us, as he did in 2016, that the power is absolutely in our hands. So the Congresswoman said these words, and I want them to seep down deep into your soul, because it's not enough for us to get together. When we leave this place, we must be committed to use our time, our talent, and our treasure to turn this thing around. But this is what the Congresswoman said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want an America as good as its promise. What Lansing, Michigan wants, and what Cleveland, Ohio wants, and what Tyler, Texas wants is an America as good as its promise. And it doesn't matter what part of this country we are from, whether we a little red or a little blue, a little country, a little rock and roll, a little R&B, a little rap. What we want is simple. We want to make sure that our children will have a better future than we have right now. It's simple. We want to make sure that our tax dollars are invested to utilize those dollars for the greatest good. And I think Medicare for all is the greater good. What the people want is simple. And ladies, what we want is simple. We want our whole damn dollar. What we want is simple. We want to make sure that we take care of Mother Earth, because no matter how much money you make, we can never replace Mother Earth. Climate change is real. What the people want is simple. We want to make sure that we have immigration reform that lifts all immigrants, that we take care of our DACA recipients. What we want is simple. It's not complicated. But the only way, sisters and brothers, that this is going to happen is that we must protest, and we must plan, and we must persevere, and that every single level of office matters, not just who's in the Congress and not just who's in the White House, but who's in the governor's mansions and state legislatures all across this country. What we want is simple. Because our mission is so high, we can't get over it. And our mission is so low, we can't get under it. And our mission is so wide, we can't get around it. You see, sisters and brothers, titles are good. They get your phone calls returned. They get you in the room. Yeah, they're very good. Too bad we got a whole bunch of folks with fancy titles. They don't know how to act when they get in the room, and they don't know who they standing for once they get in there. Titles are good, but purpose is better. Titles are good, but purpose is better, sisters and brothers. And talking about purpose, speaking of purpose, speaking of planning, speaking of perseverance, I know somebody that you know too, who stands up even when it is unpopular, who's been a progressive long before being progressive was cool. I know somebody who's the most seasoned millennial I know. Millennials, can I get an amen? I know somebody that you know too who has the courage to challenge the system and challenge us, making sure that we understand that we deserve better than what we are getting right now. I know somebody. I know somebody who has more heart-soul agreement than most folks who serve in the Congress today. I know somebody. He's from a state that begins with a V. In 2016, he showed this country that you can run for president not off of big dollars and big donors, but by everyday people power, say $27. I know somebody who never gives up, never gives in, and stands for all people, black, brown, white, all across this country. I know somebody. Now, I want you to join me right now and stand to your feet. Stand to your feet. If you know who I'm talking about, I want you to say, amen. I want to bring to you the senator from Vermont who stands for the people of this great nation, Bernie Sanders. Whoa! Thank you. Thank you. In case you haven't noticed, there are a lot of people here. And I want to thank all of you for coming out. And I want to thank Lansing for being an integral part of the political revolution that is sweeping this country. And I want to thank Nicole and Not One Penny for organizing this event. And I want to thank especially those people who came before you earlier to speak. And whenever we do events, when Nina Turner and I do events, and by the way, one of my dreads always is having to follow Nina Turner. As you know, Nina is the head of our revolution. And what they are doing is working night and day to train working people and young people to run for office, to get involved in the political process. Nina, thank you very much. And the reason we always have ordinary people come forward to talk about what's going on in their lives is that as a nation, we don't do that enough. There is a lot of pain in this country, and the only way we deal with that reality is when we have the courage to talk about that reality. No family that I know of, in one way or another, does not have its set of problems. And as I've traveled this country and I have met here in Michigan, all over this country, beautiful, beautiful people. And one of the privileges that I've had as a United States Senator, as a candidate for President of the United States, well, and let me just, thank all of you for the help you gave me in winning here in Michigan. We pulled off quite an upset here. Thank you very much. But one of the reasons that we want to hear from people, get up and talk, is as I go around the country, let me tell you some of what I hear and the people that I talk to. I hear from mothers who make $25,000 or $30,000 a year working really hard, but they can't afford to pay $10,000 or $15,000 a year for child care. I hear from workers, and I'll never forget, I was in Nevada, and a young woman, late 20s, came up to me, tears streaming down her eyes. She said, Bernie, I make $10.45 an hour, and I've got a daughter. I don't know how I'm going to make it. And she spoke
for millions of low-wage workers all across this country. Some of them are working 2 or 3 jobs in order to pay the bills. And I hear from women workers who ask a simple question: how come I'm getting paid 80% of what a man is paid for doing the same work? I hear from men and women who have put their lives on the line defending this country, our veterans, who ask me why they are not getting the benefits that they deserve in a timely manner. Just yesterday, literally yesterday, I was in Racine, Wisconsin, and I spoke to a teacher who, again, with tears in her eyes, this is a teacher, said, I had to tell my daughter that we could not afford to send her to college. And all across this great country, we have hundreds of thousands of bright, young, working-class kids who want to go to college, who should be going to college, who cannot afford to go to college. And then I've talked to others who have gone to college, and they left school $50,000, $100,000 in debt, and they spend year after year. Just spoke yesterday again in Racine. Guy went to architectural school. He's been paying off his student debt for 10 years. He hasn't gotten into the principal yet, just paying off the interest after 10 years. I have talked to workers throughout this country, in my own state of Vermont, all over this country, who had decent union jobs. They were earning middle-class wages, and suddenly one day their employer walked in and said, sorry, we're shutting down your plant, we're moving to Mexico or moving to China. And many of those workers are now working for 50, 60, 70% of what they used to earn. Think about somebody who worked for 30 years in a factory, made decent wages, and now is ending his work life at wages substantially lower than what he or she had enjoyed throughout their working career. I talk to older workers, people who are 60, 62, and they say, Bernie, I have worked my entire life, but I got nothing in the bank as I await retirement. How scary is that? And I've talked to older Americans who are trying to get by on $12,000 or $14,000 a year Social Security. People who are cutting their pills in half because they cannot afford the high cost of prescription drugs. For the last 40 years in America, the great middle class, once the envy of the entire world, has been shrinking, and what we have seen is a massive growth in income and wealth inequality. America is not supposed to be about 3 people, the 3 richest people in America, owning more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. America is not supposed to be an economy in which the top 0.1% owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%. It is not supposed to be an economy in which almost all new income is going to the top 1%. Now, I'm back in Michigan to thank you for your support in the campaign and to tell you that what we have accomplished together, and it's a lot. When I first announced that I was going to run for president, I was determined to force discussion and debate about issues that most people ran away from. And when we announced and talked about the issues that I thought were important, people said, Bernie, you are nuts, you're crazy, you're too radical, you are an extremist. Well, it turns out that we went to state after state, including Michigan, and people listened to the ideas that we were talking about. And in Michigan and in 22 other states in this country, those ideas did not appear to be too radical at all. And the great success that together we have had is that many of the ideas 2 years ago that seemed to be radical and fringe are today mainstream ideas. Thank you, Michigan. During the campaign, we said that in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. We've got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. And that living wage is $15 an hour. And people said, oh my God, $15 an hour, that's so radical. The federal minimum wage, $7.25 now, you want to more than double it? Can't be done. Well, do you know what's happening all across this country right now? States and cities are passing $15 an hour minimum wages. So thank you, Michigan, for helping us. And then we said that in a highly competitive global economy, where most of the good new jobs are going to require either a college education or technical training, that we need in America to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And article after article, editorial after editorial said Bernie Sanders is nuts, too radical an idea. Well, guess what's happening all across the country? States and communities are now moving forward to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Thank you, Michigan. When we began the campaign, we said that our criminal justice system is broken and that we need to end the so-called war on drugs, which has been a failure. And lo and behold, it turned out that for Michigan and people all over the country, it made no sense that America has more people in jail than any other country on earth, and we're spending $80 billion a year to lock up fellow Americans. And we said that it seemed to us to be pretty stupid to equate marijuana at the same federal level as heroin. And now, again, all across the country, state after state, moving to decriminalize marijuana or to make it legal. During the campaign, we said that in our great country, there is something profoundly wrong when we are the only major nation on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right, not a privilege. And then people began to start thinking, how does it happen that Canada and Germany and the UK and Scandinavia and every other major country guarantees not only health care to all people, but they have much lower cost for prescription drugs, and they spend significantly less per capita on health care than we do. And people began to think about it. When I introduced my Medicare for All single-payer bill, when I introduced it several years ago, we had 0 co-sponsors in the Senate. Now we have 16. And all across the country, candidates are standing up and demanding that we move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. And when we began our campaign, we said, you know what? We are here to represent the working families and the middle class and those who are struggling. We don't want money from super PACs and the billionaire class. Because for too long, what politicians have done is gone to the wealthy to get their campaign funds, and they end up not being able to address the needs of working families. And what you are seeing now, once again, all over this country, are candidates who are rejecting super PACs, who are listening to the American people and getting small individual campaign contributions. So what we have accomplished together is to bring forth a progressive agenda where on issue after issue the American people are now supportive, and we are moving forward with significant momentum. But the political revolution is more than just bringing forth a progressive agenda that speaks to the needs of working families and an agenda that is prepared to take on the 1%. Because you can have great candidates and you can have great ideas, but unless you have a movement of people behind those ideas, we will not succeed. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. And that is that real change never, ever takes place from the top on down. It is always from the bottom on up. That is the history of the American labor movement. It's the history of the civil rights movement. It's the history of the women's movement, of the gay movement, of the environmental movement. Change only takes place when millions of people look around them and say loudly and clearly, the status quo is not good enough. We demand change. And all across the country, we are now seeing millions of people becoming involved in the political process in a way that we have not seen for a very, very long time. From coast to coast, we are seeing working people and young people run for office and win elections. One of the most pleasing quotes I have ever heard in my life, on November 7th, there was elections in Virginia and New Jersey. And in Virginia, the Democrats ended up doing far, far better than anyone dreamed in terms of the number of people they elected to their state legislature. But here's what was great. The people who were running were working people, young people, women, people of color, people from the gay community, transgender people. And one of the leaders of the Republican Party in Virginia, he said this, it was just very delightful for me to hear. He said, we were losing elections to people we had never even heard of. And that is exactly what the political revolution is about. What the political revolution is about is to understand that we have got to overcome some very significant psychological barriers. Now, I come from a family that never had any money. My father came to this country without any money, and he never made much money. And the idea that I would be a United States Senator would have been unthinkable to them. But what we have in this country are bright, wonderful people, working people, young people. And many of them say, I don't have a PhD in economics, and I don't know that much about foreign relations, or I don't know that much about education. I can't run for office. So let me just say this. I work in the United States Senate. And if you know some of the people that I know, you damn well can run for office. So what we need to do, we need to encourage our brothers and our sisters. And the criteria for running for office is not a PhD in economics. It is having a heart full of compassion and love. It is having the courage to stand up to powerful special interests. And it is a willingness to work hard, knock on doors, and talk to your neighbors. That is what we need. We need candidates to run for school board, city council, state legislature, all the way up. And I remember the very first time when I ran for mayor in Burlington, Vermont. It gets cold in Vermont in the winter. and the election was in March, and I remembered starting to knock on doors in January and February, and the weather was 10 below zero and sweat was pouring off of my brow. What am I doing talking to people who I've never met in my entire life? But after a while, you get used to it. You could do it. So my point is, I don't want anybody here to think that you got to have some enormously special qualities to run for office. You don't. You got to have a willingness to stand up and fight for what's right. And please, get involved in the political process in a way we have never done it before. And now, more than ever, is the time to become involved in the political process, because the stakes for the future of our country have never, ever been higher. I don't have to tell most of the people in this room that today we have the least qualified President of the United States in the history of this country. And it gives me no pleasure at all, because I have conservative friends who are honest and I respect them. We disagree. But it gives me no pleasure to tell you what you already know, that the President of the United States is a pathological liar. Someone who says one thing on Monday and the very opposite on Tuesday. That is not the type of behavior that we should expect from any president. Now, I am not unmindful that Trump won here in Michigan. And I think I have an understanding of why he won. And my views may be different than some of yours, but let me just tell you what I think. I do not believe that the vast majority of Trump voters in this state or in America are racists or sexists or homophobes or xenophobes. I don't believe that for 1 minute. I think many of the people who voted for Trump are hurting. They're struggling to keep their heads above water economically, and they listen to what Trump said during his campaign. And they listened to Trump said, I, Donald Trump, I'm going to take on the establishment and defend the interests of working people. That's what he said. They listened to him when he said, I, Donald Trump, I'm going to provide health care to everybody and lower the cost of prescription drugs. That's what he said. Unfortunately, he lied. Because he never had any intention to provide health care to all, and in fact, as all of you know, he ended up supporting terrible legislation that would have thrown up to 32 million Americans off of the health insurance they currently have. So he said health care for everybody and then supports legislation that would have thrown tens of millions of Americans off of the health care they had. We managed to beat that back by 1 vote. And I know why a lot of elderly people voted for Donald Trump. I understand that. He got in front of the American people here in Michigan and Vermont, all over the country, and he said, I am a different type of Republican. I will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. That is what he said, but what he did is introduce a budget which would cut Medicaid over a 10-year period by more than $1 trillion. Medicare by over $500 billion, and billions of dollars in cuts to people with disabilities who get Social Security. Donald Trump told the American people during his campaign that he was going to bring forth tax legislation that benefits working people, not the wealthy. Well, it turns out that the bill that he supported and passed will provide 83% of the benefits at the end of 10 years to the top 1%. And that, at the end of 10 years, 93 million middle-class Americans will be paying more in taxes, not less. Now, you don't have to believe me that this tax bill is absurd. Listen to what Bill Gates had to say. Bill Gates is obviously a multi-billionaire, one of the wealthiest people in our country. And Bill Gates said, you know what? I've got enough money. I don't need a tax break. I need to be paying more in taxes. And Bill Gates is absolutely right. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, our job is not to give tax breaks to profitable multinational corporations and to the wealthiest people in this country. Our job is to demand that they start paying their fair share of taxes. And Donald Trump said he's going to drain the swamp. He is tired of powerful special interest running Washington. But then he ended up bringing more billionaires into his administration, more people from Wall Street than any administration in modern American history. And just the other day, a document was released from the Koch brothers, the third wealthiest family in America, just documenting all of the benefits that they have received from the Trump administration. Donald Trump said he was going to stand with working families and take on the establishment. He has stood with the establishment and brought forth legislation that would do devastating harm to the working families of this state and the country. And let me tell you what their agenda is about, because it is not complicated. And this is what the Koch brothers' agenda is also about. Number one, you give massive tax breaks to the wealthiest people in the country. Number two, and their tax bill, by the way, would raise the deficit over a 10-year period by $1.4 trillion. Tax breaks for the rich, you raise the deficit, and then you go to the American people and say, oh my God, the deficit is going up. We've got to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, and nutrition programs. That is what their agenda is. Now, mark my words. When the Koch brothers and their organization start putting ugly 30-second ads on TV here in Michigan and around the country, trust me that the ads will not say, vote for candidate X. He wants to give tax breaks to the rich and cut Social Security. That is not what those ads are going to say. What their program is to figure out how you can win when you have an agenda that benefits the very rich at the expense of everybody else. And I will tell you what their plan is in that regard. Their plan, led by Donald Trump, is to try to divide the American people up based on the color of our skin, the country we came from, based on our religion, based on our gender, based on our sexual orientation. You know, every president, including some very conservative presidents, kind of understand that when you are president of the United States, what your job is to bring the American people together, not divide us up. Now, everybody in this room knows that the United States and every other country, not just America, has had to deal with bigotry, has to deal with irrational prejudice. You go back to the beginning of our country and what the settlers did, the terrible things they did to the Native Americans. You go back to the abomination of slavery and racism. You go back to the fact that 100 years ago, women in America did not have the right to vote. You go back to the terrible humiliations put forth for the gay community. All right, we have gone through all of that. We've gone through discrimination against the Italians, the Irish, the Jews, the Asians, you name it. But one of the beauties of our country is that throughout our history, good people, brave people, have stood up and struggled against racism and discrimination. And we think about the heroes and heroines of the civil rights movement, people who were jailed, people who were killed, women who went on hunger strikes. We think about all those who struggled against discrimination, to speak about a common humanity. No matter what religion we are, what color our skin is, we have a common humanity. And that has been the struggle. And we have made real progress on that. Nobody would have thought 30, 40 years ago that we would have elected not once but twice an African American as President of the United States. So we have struggled, and as a nation, we have come, and we should be very proud of that, come a long, long way in terms of women's rights and gay rights and so forth and so on. And our message to Donald Trump is this country has suffered too much. We have struggled too much against bigotry. We are not going backward. We are going forward. We will not allow Trump and his friends to divide us up. We are going to stand together. But when we talk about where we are, it is not good enough. And I know sometimes it is very tempting. People get really upset at Trump, and every day they want to attack him on this, that, and the other thing. But we also have to have a positive vision to address the real crises facing the American people. Not good enough just to beat up on Trump. And for a start, what we have got to do is revitalize American democracy. We have got to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Too many people fought and died to defend American democracy. American democracy means to me one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. We need to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And we need to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee paid family and medical leave. Many in the Republican leadership want to cut Social Security. Our job is to expand Social Security benefits. On Wednesday, I will be part of an effort to introduce a piece of legislation calling for $1 trillion investment in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems. And when we do that, we can create up to 15 million good-paying jobs. Our job is to understand that we face a great moral crisis at this moment. There are 1.8 million young people in this country who have lived here virtually all of their lives. 800,000 in the DACA program, 1 million eligible for DACA. Our job is to make certain that we provide legal protection for those people and a path towards citizenship. And that is precisely what the American people want. Over 80% of the American people say, in poll after poll, we cannot turn our backs on these young people who are working, they're in school, they are in the military. Going to stand with the young people in DACA. And we are not going to let Trump and his billionaire friends repeal net neutrality. The internet belongs to all of us, not just a handful of large media corporations. One of the areas where we become today an international embarrassment is when we have national leaders like Trump and others who reject science. You cannot do public policy if it is not based on scientific information. The debate is now long over that climate change is real. It is caused by human activity. It is causing devastating problems in our country and around the world. And yet we have a president who thinks that climate change is a hoax emanating in China. Go figure. But our job, and this is not easy stuff, but we're not talking about our generation. We're talking about the kids and our grandchildren. We are talking about having the courage to stand up to the fossil fuel industry, telling them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And yes, America will lead the world in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. That is the future. Now let me say a word on an issue that I know is on everybody's minds, and that is the terrible shooting that took place at the high school in Parkland, Florida, on top of the shooting, the mass slaughter that we saw outside of the Las Vegas hotel a few months ago where 58 Americans were mowed down and 500 were wounded, on top of Columbine, on top of so many other mass slaughters of kids and Americans. Now, I come from a state which is a very, very rural state, one of the most rural states in the country, and many, many of our people hunt and they fish and they enjoy the outdoors. But I believe that I can speak for the vast majority of the people in my state, and I know for the people all over this country, who believe that we have got to stand up to the NRA and that we need common sense gun safety legislation. Now let me say this, because I don't want to overstate it. Right now in America, there are hundreds of millions of guns. In America, there are, it is estimated, some 5 million assault weapons that are out there. And tragically, in our country today, and you all know this, there are thousands of people within every state in the country who are at their wits' end. Some of them are suicidal. Some of them are homicidal. That's just the simple reality of America today. So this problem is a difficult problem. And anyone who gets up in front of you and says, I have the magical solution and we're going to prevent absolutely any more of these horrible disasters, is not telling you the truth. But having said that, having acknowledged that this is a difficult problem, that does not mean that we should not be doing everything humanly possible to prevent gun slaughters. And you know what? I know that there are divisions within America. I know that there are good people on both sides of every issue you can think of. And there are differences of opinion about guns. But here is the truth that you should know. That by very significant majorities, the American people, including gun owners, believe in common sense gun control legislation. Very few people believe that we should not expand and improve background checks. Right now, you have the absurdity of that people who are on a terrorist watch list can't fly in an airplane because we worry about what they may do, are able to buy guns. That makes no sense to anybody. Vast majority of the American people understand that it is wrong that people can go to a gun show and buy weapons without any background check at all. Or that somebody can legally buy a weapon or a lot of weapons at a gun shop, but then sell them to people who should not be having those weapons. And that is what the vast majority of the American people believe. Now, there's a division of opinion on the following, although I think a majority now agree with this. It is my view, and it has been my view for 30 years, that assault weapons are military weapons designed to kill human beings. And we saw in Las Vegas how in a few minutes' time somebody could kill and wound many, many hundreds of people in a few minutes with these weapons. In my view, the time is now to ban the sale and distribution of assault weapons. Let me conclude by telling you some very good news. And that is on issue after issue, including most of the issues that I've talked about this afternoon. The vast majority of the American people support an agenda that works for the middle class and working families, and is prepared to take on the 1%. That's not Bernie Sanders. That is what the American people want. So the question that all of us should be pondering is, when you have Republican leadership talking about tax breaks for billionaires, which the vast majority of the American people don't want to see, driving up the deficit, don't want to see, and then cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, nutrition, the American people don't want to see that. How do Republicans win elections? And the answer is, that's the question we have to deal with. And the answer is, A, they have unlimited amounts of money. All right, the Koch brothers plan on spending, with a few billionaire friends, some $400 million in the midterm elections. But second of all, a lot of people are demoralized. A lot of people are throwing up their hands and they say, I'm sick and tired. I'm not going to vote. I just can't do anything about it. I'm just one person. I can't take on the machine. Our job right now, in this pivotal moment in American history, is to reach out to our brothers and sisters and to tell them that despair is not an option. To tell them that when we stand together and when we don't allow Trump and his friends to divide us up, yeah, we can provide health care to all of our people. We can have paid family and medical leave. We can make public colleges and universities tuition-free. We can protect a woman's right to choose. We can have real campaign finance reform and public funding of elections. We can lead the world in transforming our energy system. We can put an end to racism and sexism and homophobia. We can do those things. This is not utopian thinking. This is not pie in the sky. We can do it when we stand together, when we are prepared to get involved in the political process, to run for office, to support progressive candidates. When we do that, brothers and sisters, there is no end to what we can accomplish for our great country. Thank you very much.